Well, he did always like rock climbing. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be continuing my Mission Impossible review series with the fourth film in the franchise, 2011's action thriller, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol stars Tom Cruise, Jeremy Renner, and Simon Pegg, and was directed by Brad Bird. It tells the story of IMF agent Ethan Hunt, who, following the disavowalment of the IMF, must work with a small team to save the world and clear their names. Like many other long-running franchises, Mission Impossible has undergone a number of changes since its inception. Although the series has now fallen into a stylistic groove of sorts, with consistency from one film to the next, that wasn't always the case. The first three films of this franchise are vastly different from one another, episodic to the point that a newcomer just watching clips of each probably wouldn't be able to tell that they're from the same franchise. The first movie was a moody espionage mystery, the second a bombastic, cheesy action movie, and the third a grittier action thriller. That third film provided a bit of course correction stabilization for the franchise, but it also provided an out. It very easily could have been the end of the franchise. It was a natural stopping point for the story, and it did stop for quite a few years. But for as good of a stopping point as it was an equally good launchpad. Not for a complete reset, not even for a reboot, just a shift. It allowed for the start of a new era of the franchise, an enlivening, a reinvigoration of what was already there, which gave us Ghost Protocol, and started us on the action-heavy trajectory that the franchise is still following to this day. From a story perspective, Ghost Protocol really scales things back. All three of the previous films had fairly involved storylines. None that I would say are overly complex, but they did frequently try to be twisty and surprising, which resulted in a bit of convolution on more than one occasion. Instead of trying to craft another twist-filled mystery, Ghost Protocol took a much more simple and comparatively straightforward approach, focusing on the recovery of stolen nuclear codes and Ethan and his team trying to clear their names. Sound familiar? Well, that's not surprising, because those are two very commonly used plot devices in spy stories. The fact that Ghost Protocol uses them might sound like it should be a bad thing, but it's actually refreshing in its mission simplicity, because it lets us focus on the team and the interesting and unique ways they go about trying to accomplish these goals. The overarching story may be familiar, but it's the events that happen within the story that make the film interesting. This is an exceptionally well-paced movie, so even though there are some moments of classic espionage exposition, the story never stops moving, always pushing us along to the next plot beat. As I already mentioned, the story really allows us to focus in on the team. Due to events in the film, things are a bit more scaled down than in the past. Resources and personnel are much more limited than usual, so the team is a bit smaller and more self-reliant. There are some new characters, and a few old favorites as well, but the team needs to work together to take on the most high-stakes threat they had ever faced. Even though the Mission Impossible films that showcase IMF as an agency can be fun, there's something extra satisfying about seeing a film where the central team is left largely unsupported, because they have to make do with what they have. Minimal intel, old and frequently malfunctioning equipment. It's far from an ideal scenario for them, and it shows. They mess up, they get hurt, they fail with parts of their plans and have to shift their approach halfway through the mission. But for me at least, that's way more interesting to watch than a story where the main characters succeed with every single thing they try to do. Teamwork is key here, and the team dynamic is really strong, but I do have to say that the characters aren't the most interesting this time around. They're fun, but there's no character development. Everybody's pretty static, which is fine, because the film keeps you busy with its story and action, but the lack of any sort of arcs for the characters is a bit strange, especially coming on the heels of Mission Impossible 3. That was a fairly emotional film for the franchise, and really focused on the internal struggle that Ethan was facing regarding his work-life balance. It's a movie that really looked at the human side and consequences of being a spy, and that had a pretty significant impact on Ethan as a character over the course of that film. But apart from a few scenes, you'd never be able to guess that here, because he's back to his old mission driven self. Again, not horrible for an action movie, but a little disappointing after Mission Impossible 3. Similarly, the villain here is also a bit disappointing. His villain plot is somewhat memorable, and certainly a big deal for the story, but as a character, Hendrix is pretty forgettable, lacking any real personality or characterization. Something that's anything but disappointing here, though, is the action. The Mission Impossible franchise is now widely considered to be one of the best modern action franchises, but it didn't really gain that superlative until this film. Mission Impossible 3 had some good action that started the franchise on the action path, but Ghost Protocol takes things to new heights. Literally. The Burj Khalifa sequence is probably the most memorable of the film, and one of the most memorable of the franchise, for good reason. But this film is loaded with impressive and exciting action. In the first 30 minutes alone, there are 3 action set pieces that would have served as very worthy finales for any other action movie. And then there's a whole other hour and a half of action that follows. Prison breaks, explosions, gravity-defying high-rise antics, sandstorm car chases, brawls, and plenty of shots of Tom Cruise running at full speed. It's not cheesy, it's not overly self-serious, it's the perfect blend of fun and awe-inspiring, made even more amazing by the fact that the stunts were done practically, and largely without stunt doubles. That Burj Khalifa scene? There's no green screen there. They were really filming out the windows of the 126th floor. And that guy running along the windows and swinging on ropes more than 1,500 feet in the air? That was really Tom Cruise. Action is always a big point of discussion when talking about this film, but one thing that I think is often overlooked about this movie is the change in tone. This is really the first film in the franchise that had some consistent levity to it. So there are some slightly more traditional comedic elements, largely stemming from Simon Pegg's Benji receiving a promotion to field agent and being a bigger part of the story. However, most of the levity here doesn't come from jokes, but rather from how self-aware the film is. It never pokes fun at itself, but there's definitely some acknowledgement of the tropes, cliches, and expectations that fans have for the franchise. Characters will pause and acknowledge the craziness of the stunt that they're about to do. Other times, they question aloud how some outlandish plan managed to work. It's never done in a meta way, and again, it's not self-parody, but these moments of knowing levity inject some fun into the film and prevent it from ever becoming too self-serious. And when you've got a franchise that's as ridiculous and over-the-top as this one is, that's a really important quality to have. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is definitely the action. This didn't make the pros list for the first 2 films, but from Mission Impossible 3 onwards, it's a pro column mainstay. Mission Impossible 3 got the franchise on the right track with action, but it was Ghost Protocol that really set the standard. Not only for the franchise, but really for any action movie that came out in the 2010s. There are so many massive action sequences in this story that it's, ironically, easy to forget some of them when you're thinking back on the movie. But then you rewatch it and are amazed once again by the action on display throughout the film. Foot chases, car chases, massive explosions, riotous prison breaks, magnet-aided infiltration, hand-to-hand combat, the most elaborate parking garage fight put to film, and of course, the now iconic Burj Khalifa sequence. Any 1 or 2 of these would have been more than enough for a typical action film, but this movie features all of them, done practically, and largely without stunt doubles. The second pro is the pacing. This is a very fast-moving, driving film, but it never feels overwhelmingly so. It's exhilarating and exciting, but never exhausting. It's quick enough to keep the intensity up and keep the momentum going, but it provides just the right amount of breathing room. For us as the audience, at least. The characters never get any downtime, but that just translates to satisfying entertainment for us. Pro number 3 is the tone. This is the film where Mission Impossible as a franchise really found itself and settled into a style that worked. This movie deals with some intense and serious things, but stays fun, never getting bogged down in self-seriousness, but also never succumbing to cheesiness. The previous films struggled with those two things, but Ghost Protocol finally found the right tone for the material. It's exciting and suspenseful, but never loses a sense of self-aware levity that keeps things just the right amount of fun. On the con side, the biggest issue is the minimal characterization. This pops up most noticeably with the antagonist of the film, Hendrix. His evil plot is a big deal in the movie, but as a character, he's kind of a nothing. He's like a blank slate when it comes to personality. It's almost like the writers forgot to describe him in the script, and then also forgot to give him much in terms of lines either. And so on set, they were just like, be an evil bad guy. And he ends up being the most generic evil bad guy you could think of. He's not awful, just extremely forgettable as a character. The minimal characterization also extends to our protagonists, too. They at least have personalities, but none of them undergo any sort of change over the course of the film. There are no character arcs, no character development. Again, it's fine, because the film distracts you with exciting action, but the characters are surprisingly static, which is a little disappointing after the focus on character growth for Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible 3. Before I give you my rating recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol 4 out of 5 paws. It's an extremely well-paced, action-packed start to the new era of Mission Impossible. The villain isn't the most memorable, but just about everything else is in this fun action spy thriller. I would recommend Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol to people looking for a good action movie. The franchise would somehow later go on to top the action feats and story of this film, but that doesn't make Ghost Protocol any less impressive. This was the start of something new for the franchise, combining huge, exciting action set pieces with classic Mission Impossible spycraft. If you were never big on the franchise before, you might want to give this one a shot, because it might just make you a fan. If you liked Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, I would recommend The Incredibles. Following up an action spy thriller with an animated superhero movie might sound a bit weird at first, but the team focus and well-paced story ensure that these two Brad Bird-directed films have more in common than you might initially expect. If you prefer to go the live-action route, you might want to check out The Bourne Legacy. It's another action spy thriller starring Jeremy Renner that's actually decent, as long as you view it as a movie entirely disconnected from the rest of the Bourne franchise. And if you want to stay within the Mission Impossible franchise, you should watch Mission Impossible 3. Even though the action and spectacle may lead you to one of the later films, this third film in the franchise was the beginning of the current action trajectory, and features the character development and strong villain that this one lacks. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what movie features your favorite practical stunt? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.